following a frantic new round of diplomacy to avert the war. Emergency crews on Saturday battled to restore power to more than 1 million homes and businesses a day after Storm Eunice carved a deadly trail across northwest Europe and left transport networks in disarray. Australia opens its international borders to all vaccinated tourists nearly 2 years after the island nation first imposed some of the world's strictest COVID travel restrictions. And Queen Elizabeth tested positive for COVID-19, but her aide said her symptoms were mild. First in our news, Russian President Vladimir Putin and his U.S. counterpart Joe Biden have agreed to a summit to be held only if Moscow does not invade Ukraine. France announced Monday following a frantic new round of diplomacy to avert an all-out war. Both leaders have said yes in principle to the summit proposed by French President Emmanuel Macron, according to his office, with the White House confirming Biden's willingness, though it was notably cautious. A senior administration official told AFP, timing to be determined, format to be determined, so it's all completely notional. The announcement of the summit came moments after Macron held his second marathon call with Putin on the day. During their first 105-minute discussion, Putin blamed the increase in violence on the front line on provocations carried out by the Ukrainian security forces, according to a Kremlin statement. President Putin repeated a call for the United States and NATO to take Russian demands for security guarantees seriously, but Macron's office also said the two had agreed on the need to favor a diplomatic solution to the ongoing crisis and to do everything to achieve one. Moscow wants guarantees that its neighbor, a former Soviet state, will be permanently barred from joining the U.S.-led alliance. It has also called for NATO to cease all military activities in Eastern Europe, blaming it for undermining security in the region. Earlier, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Russia remained on the brink of invading Ukraine.
Everything we're seeing tells us that the decision we believe President Putin has made to invade is moving forward. We've seen that with provocations created by the Russians or separatist forces over the weekend, false flag operations. Now the news just this morning that the quote-unquote exercises Russia was engaged in Belarus with 30,000 Russian forces that were supposed to end this weekend will now continue because of tensions in eastern Ukraine, tensions created by Russia and the separatist forces it backs there.
Now, U.S. media cited anonymous sources as saying that Washington received intelligence last week showing the Kremlin has given troops the order to attack. The White House, Pentagon, and State Department did not confirm the reports when asked by AFP. Now, these satellite images from a U.S. company also showed new Russian troop deployments along the border. The pictures show multiple new field deployments of armored equipment and troops departing from existing military sites into forests and fields approximately 9 to 19 miles from Russia's border with Ukraine, according to U.S. satellite imagery company Maxar in an email. The new photos taken Sunday appear to show vehicle tracks cutting through snow-covered fields that are surrounded by woodland and bordered by roads with several buildings also visible. Analysis of Sunday's photos, plus others taken February 13, indicate troop and equipment movement near 3 localities in southwestern Russia, according to the Colorado-based satellite company. The future of NATO, the Transatlantic Security Alliance, is at the center of this standoff between Russia and the West over Ukraine. Earlier, fears of escalation mounted after Belarus announced that Russian forces would remain on its soil after Sunday's scheduled end to joint drills, further tightening the screws on Ukraine. Moscow had previously said the 30,000 troops it has in Belarus were carrying out readiness drills with its ally to be finished by Sunday, allowing the Russians to head back to their bases. But Belarus said it had decided with Russia to continue inspections, citing increased military activity on their shared borders and an alleged escalation in East Ukraine. Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko said Thursday his country could host nuclear weapons if it faces any external threats. Belarus strongman Alexander Lukashenko has become an increasingly close ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Intelligence officials in the U.S. and NATO say as many as 150,000 troops, as well as warplanes and equipment, are now positioned near the border with Ukraine on three sides. In Ukraine, bent in a semi-crouch, Ukraine's Interior Ministry ran back from an exposed front-line position as mortar shells crashed in the fields around him. Just minutes earlier, Denis Monastersky had told reporters, "We are ready for any scenario at any time." On Saturday, the scenario was a surprise. Mortar barrage after he met troops and inspected trenches and bunkers outside Novolugansky in the Donetsk region of eastern Ukraine. The message for the accompanying journalist was that Moscow-backed forces are stepping up attacks along the 8-year-old front line amid the growing menace of a full-scale Russian invasion. As the minister, dressed in camouflage fatigues and a military helmet, walked back up at an exposed road lined with abandoned vehicles, shells whistled through the air and exploded in nearby fields. Monastersky, his escorts, and reporters scrambled for cover before running back up the road to their vehicles. No one was hurt, and the official would later say that he thought the army, not he, was the target. Meanwhile, people evacuated from the Moscow-backed breakaway region of Donetsk are waiting for trains in the southwestern Russian town of Taganrog to move further deeper into the country. Let's listen in.
Что делают? Бомбят нас, пугают детей. Летают над нами, горлока от нас недалеко. Слышим, как оно все там летает, бьет, разрывается, освещается.
Поэтому мы решили быстренько уехать. Мы очень устали, но надеемся, что наступит мир, и мы вернемся домой, будет все хорошо.
Как вас зовут?
Да это война. Реальная. Просто я считаю, что стороны уже вот на протяжении 8 лет они не могут найти компромиссного решения, поэтому это все продолжается. И, конечно, даже мы, например, мы не видим выхода пока.
Мама, а мне можно?
And stood inside the buses while they waited, getting on and off as they did so. The Moscow-backed separatists have accused Ukraine of planning an offensive into their enclave and ordered a general mobilization, evacuating civilians onto neighboring Russian territory, despite the huge Russian military buildup on the frontier. Ukraine and Russia both called Sunday for intensified diplomatic efforts to avert all-out war, but blamed each other for a sharp escalation in shelling on the front line, separating Kiev's forces from Moscow-backed separatists. After separate calls with France's President Emmanuel Macron, both Russian leader Vladimir Putin and Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky pressed for more talks. Meanwhile, the Philippine Embassy in Poland has sent a consular team to Ukraine to enable faster coordination with Filipinos and the local authorities. In a statement on Monday, the embassy said the team was sent to Lviv, a city in the western part of the country, close to the Polish border, on February 17, as it exercises jurisdiction over Ukraine. The move is also to guarantee immediate assistance to Filipino nationals, according to the embassy. The team, it said, was composed of a consul and an assistant to the nationals officer and was in coordination with the Philippine Honorary Consulate General in Kiev, where they established an emergency contact base. The two are also directed to monitor the situation in Ukraine as well as connect with the Filipinos in the country who have registered with the embassy. During their first day, it said the team has successfully sent off 2 Filipino nationals from Lviv to Manila and had met with groups of Filipinos who temporarily relocated to Lviv from Kiev as a precautionary measure. The embassy, it said, is working with the Department of Foreign Affairs, Office of the Undersecretary for Migrant Workers Affairs, and the Philippine Honorary Consulate General in Kiev in arranging the Philippine government's voluntary repatriation program for Ukraine. Last February 18, 6 Filipinos arrived at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport from Ukraine as part of the government's free repatriation program. Meanwhile, the Kremlin warned there are no concrete plans for a summit between the Russian and U.S. leaders as diplomats scramble to head off the threat of a Russian invasion of Ukraine. The idea of a meeting between Presidents Vladimir Putin and Joe Biden has been championed by France and cautiously welcomed by Ukraine as a way to avert a catastrophic war in Europe. But President Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov said, quote, "It's premature to talk about any specific plans for organizing any kind of summits," adding that no concrete plans had been put in place. France's President Emmanuel Macron called Putin on Sunday, and afterwards his office said that both the Russian and Biden were open to the idea. The summit would go ahead, however, only on the condition that Russia does not invade Ukraine. But in Washington, a senior U.S. administration official told AFP, quote, "Timing to be determined, format to be determined, so it's all completely notional," unquote. Russia annexed the Ukrainian region of Crimea in 2014, and Moscow-backed separatists hold an enclave in the eastern districts of Lugansk and Donetsk. In recent weeks, according to U.S. intelligence, Moscow has amassed more than 150,000 troops and sailors around Ukraine's borders in Belarus, Russia, Crimea, and the Black Sea. President Biden has said that U.S. intelligence believes that Putin has made a decision to invade Ukraine and that commanders are readying units to attack within days. Russia has long denied this. Meanwhile, equities spared losses and oil prices sank Monday after Presidents Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin agreed in principle to hold a summit to try to find a way out of the Ukraine crisis. Warnings from U.S. officials that Russia could invade its neighbor imminently have sent markets spiraling in the past week and sent crude surging towards $100 a barrel as traders fret over already tight supplies. The crisis has compounded worries about inflation, which is sitting at a 40-year high and putting pressure on the Fed Reserve to hike interest rates, with investors speculating over how fast and how hard it will move. Monday's session started on a negative note, with markets suffering hefty falls, but the losses were reduced after the U.S. and Russia leaders said they would hold talks on Ukraine as long as Putin does not invade. The news raised hopes for a peaceful conclusion to the standoff, though traders remain on edge. So Tokyo, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Seoul, Singapore, Taipei, Manila, and Wellington were all in the red, though Sydney and Jakarta edged up slightly. And European stock markets climbed at the open Monday on hopes that a possible summit between U.S. and Russian President Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin could help to avert a conflict in Ukraine. London's benchmark FTSE 100 gained 0.5% to 7,549.08 points. In the Eurozone, Frankfurt's DAX jumped 0.9% to 15,182.80 points, and the Paris CAC 40 added 0.6% to 6,974.07. Putin and Biden have agreed to a summit to be held if Moscow does not invade Ukraine, France announced, following a frantic round of diplomacy to avert the all-out war. Both leaders have said yes in principle to the summit proposed by French President Emmanuel Macron, with the White House confirming Biden's willingness. And concerns on the Ukraine-Russia tension and higher average domestic inflation projection for this and next year resulted in the upticks of Treasury bill or T-bill rates on Monday. The average rate on the 91-day paper increased to 0.899%, the 182-day to 1.157%, and the 364-day to 1.568%. These were at 0.810%, 1.066% and 1.475% for the 3-month, 6-month, and 1-year papers during the auction last February 14. The Bureau of Treasury offered each tenor for 5 billion pesos, and the auction committee made full awards across the board. Meanwhile, emergency crews Saturday battled to restore power to more than 1 million homes and businesses a day after Storm Eunice carved a deadly trail across northwest Europe and left transport networks in disarray. At least 16 people now were killed by falling trees, flying debris caused by the fierce winds in Britain, Ireland, the Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, and Poland. Ryan Florentino from our EBC UK Bureau reports.
Storm Eunice killed at least 7 people in Europe on Friday, pummeling Britain with record-breaking winds and forcing millions to take shelter as it disrupts flights, trains and ferries across Western Europe. London was eerily empty after the British capital was placed under its first ever red weather warning, meaning there is danger to life. The highest weather alert was also declared across southern England, South Wales, and the Netherlands, with many schools closed and rail travel paralyzed as towering waves breached seawalls along the coast. Meanwhile, Eunice's winds knocked out power to more than 140,000 homes in England, mostly in the southwest, and 80,000 properties in Ireland, utility companies said. Around the UK capital, 3 people were taken to hospital after suffering injuries in the storm, and a large section of the roof on the capital's Millennium Dome was shredded by the gales. One wind gust of 122 miles or 196 kilometers per hour was measured on the Isle of Wight off southern England. Provisionally the highest gust ever recorded in England, the Met Office said. Scientists said the Atlantic storm's tail could pack a sting jet, a rarely seen meteorological phenomenon. Eunice caused high waves to batter the Brittany coast in northwest France, while Belgium, Denmark and Sweden all issued weather warnings. Hundreds of flights were cancelled or delayed at London's Heathrow and Gatwick airports and Schiphol in Amsterdam. Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who has placed the British Army on standby, tweeted, "We should all follow the advice and take precautions to keep safe." London's rush hour streets, where activity has been slowly returning to pre-pandemic levels, were virtually deserted as many heeded government advice to stay home. Trains into the capital were already running limited services during the morning commute, with speed limits in place, before even 7 rail operators in England suspended all operations. Experts said the frequency and intensity of the storms could not be linked necessarily to climate change, but Richard Allen, professor of climate science at the University of Reading, said a heating planet was leading to more intense rainfall and higher sea levels. That's all reporting from the United Kingdom. I am Ryan Florentino, and we live in interesting times.
Now take a look at these images filmed on Friday, February 18, showing a lorry overturning on the M40 motorway between Bicester and Banbury in Oxfordshire, England, due to strong winds. As Storm Eunice hits the UK, The death toll from torrential rains that triggered flash floods and landslides in the scenic Brazilian city of Petrópolis has now risen to 165, according to authorities. Rescue workers and residents searching for their missing relatives continue to dig through mountains of mud and rubble in Petrópolis, which President Jair Bolsonaro said Friday looked like it had been through a war. It is unclear how high the steadily rising death toll will go. It is unlikely any more survivors will be found beneath the wreckage, according to authorities. Police said the dead include at least 28 children. And weather chaos continued to batter Brazil as more violent rains lashed the southeastern state of Espírito Santo on Sunday. The new storms killed at least 2 people, according to emergency officials in Espírito Santo, which borders Rio de Janeiro, where Petrópolis is located. One person was crushed by a collapsing wall and killed in the city of Alegre, and another swept away trying to retrieve a car from severe flooding in the city of Nova Venecia. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba, sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. May lalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
To Mobile Legends!
Welcome back. Hong Kong's foreign domestic workers are being abandoned in the current coronavirus wave sweeping the city, with some forced to sleep rough or being denied treatment after testing positive. This warning came as Hong Kong's leader Carey told residents to encourage helpers to stay indoors and said police would step up social distancing fines. Attorney Hans Leo Kakdak said there are currently 410 or 41 OFWs who contracted COVID in the city. Here's his interview in ASPN earlier.
Medyo kailangan lang natin maunawaan kung ano yung paglabag na nangyari at yung penalty, most especially. Kasi medyo, yun nga, medyo steep o medyo mabigat. But rest assured, yung pong mga OFWs na nasasangkot dito are are not involved in harsh conditions. Hindi sila nakapiit, nakakulong, and we are assisting them already. At kung ano man ang kararatnan nito, tutulungan po natin sila. Hindi pwedeng humantong ito sa walang pagtulong sa kanila kasi ramdam natin na medyo mabigat ang penalty na hindi kapantay nung pagkakasala kung totoo man. As of this morning, meron tayong 41 known cases of COVID ng mga OFWs. Of the 41 cases, 8 sa kanila ay nasa ospital and all the rest are in isolation facilities. Okay. Yung napabalitaan na nasa parke yun ay nakaraan na at siya ngayon ay nasa COVID isolation facilities. Yes. Dumulog lamang po sa Polo Hong Kong facility. May Facebook page as well as a hotline. Dito sa OWA, sa Pilipinas, 1348, ang hotline natin. Dumulog lang po doon para kayo matulungan. Ang sinasabi po natin sa mga employers ay hindi na po ganun kalala ang mga kaso and therefore it's not a ground for termination. At meron naman mga nakukumbinsing employers sa kanilang mga agam-agam patungkol dito. In fact, 10 of the COVID cases are actually still with their employers. Ibig sabihin, doon sa bahay ng employer, merong adequate isolation facility. Now, meron din tayong nakukumbinsa yung Polo at yung OWA on the ground, labor attaché na pinag-utos ni Sec Delio na immobilize para kumbinsihin yung employers na yung mga nasa treatment ay hayaan mo nang dumaan sa treatment, and number 2 ay hindi naman sapat na sanhi ito para i-terminate sila. At maging pasensyoso lang po sa sitwasyon at it won't take long at panumbalik sa serbisyo.
Like mainland China, Hong Kong has stuck to a rigid zero COVID policy that largely kept the virus out, but left the international business hub cut off for the last 2 years. Those defenses have now come crashing down with a highly infectious Omicron variant entry into the local community after infected flight crew and residents returned from overseas. Meanwhile, jubilant visitors returned to Australia Monday as the country reopened its borders to vaccinated tourists nearly 2 years after the island nation imposed some of the world's strictest COVID travel restrictions. Take a look.
He's finally arrived, whether it's from the top of Cape York or down here where I am in Tasmania today and elsewhere right around the country over in the west. Today is the day when international tourists can come back to this country. Our tourism business provides so many jobs for Australians, and we're going to build that business up again as tourists come back to our country. We have the best tourism experiences anywhere in the world, and so our arms are open, they're coming back, and we're going to work strongly together to build this business up again. I want to thank everyone in the tourism and travel industry who've been doing it tough. You've hung in there, you've kept your staff together the best you can, and now we can open up and we can go back out there and get those businesses humming again.
Picking up my best friend. Haven't seen him since 2018, and he made it back just in time for my wedding in 4 days.
Oh no, I mean, like, initial incentive was so I could come to travel internationally and visit people and whatnot. But yeah, no, it was first opportunity that came available for me in the States. I got it done.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, brilliant. Awesome. Smooth. Just nice to have passengers back on again. Tourists filling seats. It's awesome. Yeah, terrific.
Oh, it's great to have her back. Have her back. She's got to go again, but we'll get her back again.
At the country's 2 major international airports in Sydney and Melbourne, tired but elated family and friends rushed from gates to embrace loved ones after years apart. The country closed its borders to almost everyone except citizens and permanent residents in March 2020, trying to slow surging COVID case numbers. The travel ban, which also barred citizens from going overseas without an exemption and imposed a strict cap on international arrivals, earned the country the nickname Fortress Australia. A Qantas flight from Los Angeles was the first to touch down in Sydney at 6:20 in the morning local time, followed by arrivals from Tokyo, Vancouver, and Singapore. Key to Australia's reopening is a government requirement that all overseas travelers must be fully vaccinated. Western Australia will not reopen to international travelers on Monday and holding off until March 3. Meanwhile, Queen Elizabeth II tested positive for COVID-19, but aides said her symptoms were mild as politicians wish Britain's longest-serving monarch a rapid recovery in her 70th year on the throne. Passers-by outside Buckingham Palace also reacted to the announcement that Britain's Queen has tested positive for COVID. Let's listen in.
Well, I'm hoping that she's fine and she doesn't have really awful symptoms, and hopefully it will just pass by fast. I mean, everyone had it at some point, so she was bound to get it, but hopefully it's fine.
Obviously it's sad, isn't it? She's a symbol of the nation. She's been she's 94. It's a bit fragile. Obviously wish her well, and hope she's boosted and everything, so she should be all right, hopefully.
In what is meant to be a banner year of Platinum Jubilee celebrations, the news comes at a stressful time for the 95-year-old Queen, with scandals stalking her two eldest sons, Charles and Andrew. Now, the Queen's heir Prince Charles, 73, tested positive for a second time for COVID on February 10, 2 days after meeting his mother at Windsor Castle west of London. The Queen, who is believed to be triple vaccinated, resumed in-person audiences at the castle last week, but complained to one attendee of suffering from stiffness and was photographed holding a walking stick. Announcing her first positive test, a Buckingham Palace statement said Her Majesty is experiencing mild cold-like symptoms but expects to continue light duties at Windsor over the coming week. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is set to announce an end to all pandemic legal curbs in England, insisting it is time to move on despite political opposition and unease from the UN's health agency. Under the Living with COVID plan, the government says it intends this week to end a legal requirement for people to self-isolate when infected with the coronavirus. It says local authorities will be required to manage further outbreaks with pre-existing legal powers and is expected to phase out free COVID testing for the general public. The NHS Confederation, which represents senior managers in the state-run National Health Service, said internal polling showed a large majority of its members were opposed to ending self-isolation and free tests. David Nabarro, a World Health Organization special envoy for COVID, said that scrapping the law on self-isolation was really very unwise indeed. While the UK has suffered one of the world's worst per capita death tolls in the pandemic, it remains a country with an enviable record for public health expertise, according to the British official telling BBC Radio on Saturday. To other news now, Myanmar's junta is set to replace Aung San Suu Kyi at the UN's top court as it seeks to dismiss a case over the alleged genocide of Rohingya Muslims. Take a look.
Pennsylvania's Highway Safety Law Awareness Week is
Recently
approaching.
presented
Today, the Department of
Myanmar's
Transportation, or PennDOT, and Pennsylvania State Police, or PSP, come together with Penn State Health at their Lifeline hangar, highlighting driver safety laws and urging motorists to put safety first.
Any comment, Mr. Chi?
Recently presented Myanmar's arguments at the International Court of Justice when the case was first heard in December 2019, but was ousted as civilian leader in a military coup last year. The Nobel Peace Laureate, who faced criticism from rights groups for her involvement in the case, is now under house arrest and trial by the same general she defended in The Hague. In its preliminary objections on Monday, Myanmar will argue that the court has no jurisdiction over the case and must throw it out before it moves on to substantive hearings. Local Myanmar media said the junta has a new delegation led by Coco Lang, International Cooperation Minister, and Thida U, Attorney General, who will attend virtually. Both have been hit with U.S. sanctions over the coup, and the case brought by the mainly Muslim African nation of the Gambia accuses predominantly Buddhist Myanmar of genocide against the Rohingya minority over a bloody 2017 military crackdown. The ICJ made a provisional order in January 2020 that Myanmar must take all measures to prevent the alleged genocide of the Rohingya while the years-long proceedings are underway. And now is the time to go to Pennsylvania. Each year, the city's Department of Transportation raises awareness on laws that are important to the safety of motorists. Here's Myla Simbula from our EBC Pennsylvania Bureau.
Pennsylvania's Highway Safety Law Awareness Week is approaching. Today, the Department of Transportation, or PennDOT, and Pennsylvania State Police, or PSP, come together with Penn State Health at their Lifeline hangar, highlighting driver safety laws and urging motorists to put safety first. According to early estimates from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, traffic fatalities in the country during the first 9 months of 2021 rose approximately 12% over 2020. In Pennsylvania, 2021 preliminary data shows deaths on our roadways have increased by as much as 10%. This includes an increase in fatalities in speeding crashes, distracted driving crashes, crashes involving a 16 or 17-year-old driver, as well as unrestrained fatalities. While fatalities in crashes involving impaired driving have remained relatively flat in recent years, data shows fatalities in crashes involving drinking drivers have been declining. However, fatalities in crashes involving drug drivers have been increasing.
Now, I think we'd all agree one fatality is too many, and increasing numbers of fatalities on our roadways is unacceptable. While we can't say for certain what's causing each and every fatalities and causing them to increase, I think we can all agree that safety on our roadways is everyone's responsibility. And as wonderful the services that are provided here by the Lifeline helicopter, I think we can all agree that we'd all be better off if it never had to be employed on one of our roadways in response to a vehicle crash. So we ask that you do your part. So help reduce those unrestrained fatalities by buckling up every trip, every time, whether you're the driver or the passenger, and make sure that everybody in your vehicle is also restrained.
In 2020, an estimated 94% of unbelted occupants, or 305 people, killed in crashes while traveling in passenger vehicles, including cars, small trucks, vans, and SUVs, could have survived if they had been buckled up. The U.S. Department of Transportation has released their new comprehensive National Roadway Safety Strategy, or NRSS. It is a roadmap for addressing roadway fatalities and serious injuries through the adoption of a safe system approach. The updated 2022 Pennsylvania Strategic Highway Safety Plan, similar to the new national strategy and anticipated to be finalized later this month, will incorporate safety system thoughts and practices. Myla Simbula and Eagle News, Swarthmore, Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Myla. Meanwhile, China on Monday denied responsibility for a rocket set to slam into the moon after experts said the piece of space junk likely came from Beijing's lunar exploration program. Let's listen in.
注意到近期关于此事的专家分析和媒体报道，根据中方的监测，嫦娥5号任务相关火箭的末级已安全坠入地球大气层，并完全烧毁。中方始终基于国际法发展航天事业，切实维护外空活动的长期可持续性。我们愿就此同各方开展广泛的交流合作。
Astronomers initially thought the wayward object was a chunk of a SpaceX rocket that blasted off 7 years ago and was abandoned in space after completing its mission. But it's now believed to be the booster for the Chang'e 5T1, launched in 2014 as part of the Chinese Space Agency's lunar exploration program. The rocket is expected to crash into the far side of the moon on March 4. But China's foreign ministry rejected the claim Monday, saying the booster in question had safely entered the Earth's atmosphere and was completely incinerated. In other news, Beijing on Monday denied Australian allegations that a Chinese naval vessel shone a laser at one of the country's surveillance aircraft in an incident that Prime Minister Scott Morrison termed an act of intimidation. Take a look.
经向中方的有关部门了解核实，澳方发布的消息不属实。中方舰船在公海海域正常航行，符合相关国际法和国际实践，完全正当合法。我们敦促澳方尊重中方舰船依据国际法在相关海域享有的合法权利，停止恶意散布涉华虚假信息。
A Chinese ship sailing off Australia's northern coast last week illuminated the plane, Canberra's Defense Department said, adding that the act had the potential to endanger lives. However, Beijing said the laser accusation was not true and defended the Chinese ship's movements as normal navigation, in line with relevant international law. China also was accused of targeting Australian aircraft using military-grade lasers in 2019 when Australian Defence Force helicopters were illuminated over the South China Sea. Relations between China and Australia have nosedived in recent years after Morrison called for an independent investigation into the origins of the coronavirus pandemic, which first emerged globally in the Chinese city of Wuhan. China responded by placing tariffs on Australian goods worth of billions of dollars, dragging both countries into a protracted trade standoff. Beijing also reacted with fury last year when Canberra joined the Trilateral Defense Pact with the U.S. and Britain that would allow it to acquire nuclear-powered submarines to counter China's growing military might in the Asia-Pacific region. And the Golden State Warriors superstar Stephen Carey puts on a shooting clinic to lead Team Lebron to victory in the 2022 NBA All-Star Game. Take a look.
For you. Yeah, this is definitely special. The first year, you got to honor Kobe and his life and his legacy with this trophy. You know, all the thought that went into it. I can't spit it off the top of my head, but I know that everything on this trophy means something in terms of his life and what he represented, accomplishments on the court, and to have it be an All-Star MVP trophy, and you know, for it to be the first one, it definitely makes it special. I've only won a lot better than last year in terms of feeling more like a normal All-Star weekend, and you know, I got to enjoy a lot of different festivities. You know, this last 4 or 5 hours has been pretty remarkable in terms of just a memorable experience that I'll take with me. So
I could not have dreamed of that moment any better than the actuality that just happened. For me to be back here, and Steph, I mean, come on, man. This guy is from a different planet. He literally has an automatic sniper connected to his arm, and when he lets it go, not only himself, but everybody on the floor, in the stands, on TV, on their phones, whatever you're watching on, you think it's going in every time. And on a split, I did not want to lose the opportunity to shake the man's hand that inspired me throughout my childhood. Haven't had much dialogue with him in my 20 years or 19 years in this business, but part of me wouldn't be here without MJ's inspiration. I always wanted to be like him growing up. You know, it's crazy that the game-winning shot tonight was a fadeaway, and it was inspired by MJ.
Somebody forgot to tell Stephen Carey that the three-point contest was Saturday as the Golden State Warriors superstar put on a shooting clinic to lead Team Lebron to victory in the NBA All-Star game. LeBron James sank the game-winning basket as his side-edged Team Durant won 163-160, giving James his fifth straight All-Star wins as team captain. But Curry was the brightest shooting star, winning the MVP award with a 50-point performance that included a record 16 threes in front of a crowd of 19,400 at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse in Cleveland, Ohio. He finished just too shy of Anthony Davis's single-game scoring record of 52 points, but shattered Paul George's previous record of 9 threes in 2016. And finally, in our news, to Calgary, Canada now, where Chinook Blast kicks off a 4-week-long event that features art installations, pop-up performances, a community stage, an art pavilion, and much more. Here's Tiffany Alisasis.
Winter. When you think of that word, you think of freezing cold temperatures, wanting to stay at home with a warm hot chocolate, thinking about all that snow you gotta shovel. Well, here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, a winter festival that warms up the city with celebrations of community and culture. This winter festival, known as Chinook Blast, shows the best of Calgary's art, light shows, live music, performances, and many more, which will all be displayed here. This event gives a chance to embrace the season and show that in this part of the world, we are not afraid of a little cold. So let's go check it out. In the month of February, every weekend in different parts of downtown Calgary, Chinook Blast proudly features 100% local artists, talents, volunteers, and businesses. This event brings so many things to do, such as enjoy some local entertainment and live music within the downtown core. And guess what? It's all free. While skating front row or sitting on the bleachers by the fire pits to warm up and groove to some music. Now let's all head over to look at the lights. Check out these unique light installations by local artists of Glowfest YYC. Glowfest has partnered with Chinook Blast to help light up the winter's darkest days. This is the only festival of its kind here. Glow artists use light as a medium to create immersive, family-friendly activations, performances, and art installations. Each night, multiple spaces around downtown core public places expanded an array of installations, projections, and light art commissioned from artists, representing national talent and a variety of background and experience. This winter event features incredible artists from around the country with a special focus on artists from Western Canada. This event gives an opportunity for Canadian artists to showcase their work and engage with the community of Calgary. Wow, that was so much fun. I hope you enjoyed it as well. That rounds up our Winterfest for today, and we'll see you again next year. From Calgary, Alberta, Canada, Tiffany Alisasis, Eagle News.
Thank you, Tiff. As always, I'll end the day on a thoughtful note. Our ability to look back and smile at our past is proof that God's plan is to keep us moving forward. This has been Eagle News International. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay alert and stay informed because we live in interesting times. Good night.